it's funny too, because that's what's going to keep happening. And it's those people that continue to look. And why do you think they would want to distract the world?
Oh yeah, exactly. Especially and getting people on the false narrative of this whole green new sustainable energy and stuff like that, using all these still like they make it seem like so there's such new innovative ideas and stuff like that, which really they're not. They're old, outdated, never were sufficient ideas. No matter what it is, whatever they say, clean energy, even if they say electric, like we all know that producing wind turbines, producing lithium batteries and stuff, the type of shit that does to the planet as well, like how that's even worse. Not only that, not to mention slave labor, not to mention material, not to mention the whole mining it, shipping it, all that shit. It's and then it's like that, but it goes back to, it reminds me of the whole thing that Matt says, be like, oh, like, it's like, it's about money. And it's like, no, okay, it's not about money. Then, okay, what is it about then? Well, it's a simple fact of it's the reliance on certain industries, reliance on, and the reliance and cooperation of people.
Yeah.
To attach to this type of entity, this type of egregore. And then when they do that, you start to tap into even their whole human form, their whole function, how they go about their lives, what they live for. People may think like, oh, well, I'd if I had that type of technology and free energy and stuff like that, sure, yeah, I wouldn't have to pay an electric bill. I'd, be able to power my whole home, then eventually my own car, everything. And I would be able to get off that stuff. But then you think about it the next step further, and the next step further after that, what that really would mean. It'd be like, well, why do I have to go and slave at a job or do this and stuff like that when I don't have a lot of these expenses anymore? Why am I going to even depend on the banks for certain things? Why am I going to depend on, having to buy a home this way? Now it's like, oh, wait a minute, I could actually invest my money in building something. I don't have to hook up with something else. This can all be available to me right there. Which you could do it. You can literally buy a piece of land. Yeah, I mean, it's different in certain areas and stuff like that, but you could buy a piece of land. Shit, you could even $11,000, $12,000 sometimes, and all depends where and stuff. And then it's like, just do your research on that. Be smart about the location. Be smart about what you're actually paying, like taxes, whatever, and stuff. Like that's where the next point goes, and you can actually change your whole fucking life.
Yeah, and it makes sense too now also, because now that we're going to be talking about the egregore thing, I mean, it's incredible because they so many people are tuned in, and I mean, I have this like yearning to discover how it all works, and now there has to be a scientific way that we are connected to the Earth's grid and each other and all that, the new age notion that everything's connected. So through the collective mind, obviously we all are, and so you have so many people believing and placing their energy towards an idea or a structure or group. Of course, it's going to grow more and more, and it's also why they would want to keep the occult knowledge at bay too, and get you to believe religion and follow the church, because then you wouldn't go deep enough into the occult to realize the deeper sciences of the planet and where we are. Yeah. So it has people tuned out. They're tuned. A lot of people can't even really see it. And that the reliance factor is there. And the cooperation obviously is there. And even to the point where this past 2 years, they definitely have proven that the cooperation factor is there, to the point where it doesn't, put a diaper on your face and go get the Jackson,
But yeah, it plays right. Yeah, it plays right along with all that stuff, because I mean, look at, I've said it before, they're leveraging people's normal day-to-day functions and things. Like, I'm not even talking about like, oh, well, I like to do this and I like to go out to eat. Like, no, not even just that. Now you're talking about people's jobs, people's, yeah, people's money. Like you're making people have to have this ultimatum that it's like, oh, well, shit, I'm afraid that if I don't do that, then I can't survive and whatever and stuff. And it's like, well, look at, why are you in that position in the first place then, that they can actually leverage those things against you? It's because it's your dependency, your reliability. That's just a fact. That's not like, oh, that's not true, you're going ahead and thinking, you're thinking, too, too out there conspiracy or whatever. It's like, no, but it's true. Are you not dependent on that, your job, whatever, to make a living, whether it's that job or the next job or the next job after that,
But I'm starting to, I now see it though. The metaphysical idea of people are antennas and that they tune into a certain channel on a certain frequency, and that, like, as if you cannot see, if your mind has been programmed and tuned to a certain frequency, it's not just a metaphor. That it is, you really don't have the eyes to see it. You have to upgrade your consciousness, and obviously through spiritual texts, it's consistently trying to say it through an allegorical or a parable type of sense. And so when you see through the veil, it's like you want to yell at people and say, yo, look. And they've done a great job at keeping people in the program, keeping people in the thought process, and they don't even think about what you're talking about. They're not thinking about, well, they think the system's natural. They wake up and go to work and do the stuff they do, that this has been laid out for them, and it's by habit. To them, it's life more than nature is. That's life to them more than a tree or a valley or a mountain or anything from Mother Nature is. The artificial construct, the matrix, has taken over people's minds, and they are tuned to it. So in simple terms, they can only think the thoughts that it is giving them. That is, if their antenna, like as if you're in a car and you're at 99.5 listening to the radio, you will not be able to get what's on 91.2. You're not going to be able to receive it. And I think that's a great metaphor. And it's to the point where it's almost pretty much literal. And it's like, how can you find a way to get people broken out of that? Because that's the game. It's not going and making conspiracy videos on TikTok. And yes, that could work. But obviously up to this point, it may has woken a few people up, a good amount, but that's not going to do it for a lot of people. And the mechanism, I think, becomes metaphysical at that point, and the right things have to be said and explained the right way. And you have to get people to understand it so they can allow that channel to actually start coming in. It's like, you got to slowly turn their dial. If you go from this to that real quick, it's not going to work.
No, exactly. And it's a big psychological aspect to it. And, I think that's also a big part of the first thing to see is like your own psychology on things. It goes back to the whole origins of beliefs, and it goes, being able to understand that there is that much of a powerful effect on you to program, even, to even program the subconscious, and how it functions. So not just your conscious state, but even the things that you don't think about, the autonomous type stuff, like, yeah. And it's pretty crazy. And like, this is one of the thoughts that I was like, that goes along with kind of what I was thinking before, earlier today, when I was sitting there, about like people thinking that there's like a big majority, there's a big majority of society that believes or suspects that the world is being run by sinister, power hungry, and like such of that nature type of people that are like hell bent on controlling the world and crushing anyone who gets in their way. And then like a third of society believes, well, yeah, it's happening, or it could be true, but what can I do about it? Most people believe, though, that they can't do anything about it. And, or there's some of the other ones that are like, oh yeah, we're just gonna, we're gonna scream, bitch, and yell, revolt about it, whatever, and stuff like that. But the ones that think like, oh, there's nothing they could do about it, I think it's also like a sense of apathy, or just like complete hopeless feeling of powerlessness because of the continuation of many destructive quality occurrences going on, or a lack of confidence in just themselves and like their own authority in their own life. So, the thing is, a lot of people try to define what is, and not just a lot of people, everybody, a lot, like us as well. We can do it in our own ways. We all can find some way that this works, but we try and define what is considered power or what is considered self-control based on the power of the struggle or oppression over ourselves, or what we feel, or that that we see, rather than do the simple thing of looking around at the many examples of what's been done. Take a look at other people and their lives and what they have done under such harsh conditions. And then you'll even face, or that they ever faced, or at least of like some sort of, relevance to the condition that we've been subjected to. And then you take a look at what's been done right in our own backyard of their own country, your own state, city, your own town, people you may even know. And then you can start to then instead identify with the emotions, the logic, the principles of some of these people and these situations that are provided, and then use the context of those journeys to help you identify what actually aligns with my truth and what actually aligns with the power of what I can do, and this way you can release that whole paradigm of being like, well, yeah, but what are you going to do about it? I can't do nothing about it. I'm hopeless, whatever. Maybe some people need the extremes of having that proof, or like they might think like, oh, well, what kind of, why am, but that's them, not me. Well, that's the other thing to shed. Why is somebody else more capable than you are? That's your own self-psychology. That's your own, whatever it is, inadequacy, trauma, whatever you want to fucking call it.
I mean, I don't think you have to generalize that one, because obviously people have gotten to where they're at, including us, in their own way, in their own journey, whether it was good or bad or painful or not. So, I mean, obviously we've just ended up at this point, and you can only analyze the past up to a certain point to say, okay, well, at least we generally have the situation here, and to see it for what it is. And what's crazy is these so-called rulers and all that. It's a good thing to know that you're just being controlled. Sometimes it's good to know that you're doing it yourself, and they won't tell you that. If anything, I think more power lies beyond the physical, and it's in the mental. And of course, I think at first we all have to battle our own demons, our own rulers, which is just aspects of our ego. And so by doing that, it's like you can kill the ego of the world, but you have to kill your own ego first. And I mean, that's even, if you want to think of it this way, that's even a signal, that's a vibration itself. Seeing people are impressionable. They see other people coming from their ego. Not only are they watching, physically seeing it, reenacting it, and thinking it's okay, but yet I do think beyond that, what's going to become most important is the new science coming in, which is that everything's electromagnetic, everything's magnetism. There's that, bringing back to the beginning of everything's connected, that whole magnetic field is. So if that's the case, and there is a collective mind, which has been proven over and over again, where like an example would be, there's a scientist in like California, and then there's a scientist in Norway, and this guy is inventing this thing over in California, and then comes to find out within 2 weeks, the same invention was over in Norway. And it was the same exact thing, yet they didn't even know each other, had no contact, but it's like as if they grabbed the idea out of the ether. So it's like a lot of concepts and things, as much as, of course, things are developed psychologically, things are developed in the mind, and they're developed from physical, the five senses. I think becoming aware of the spiritual aspects and astral aspects, thought realm aspects, that we are tuning in to frequencies, and that we are kind of experiencing something you would call a download. And you will start to see that completely different if you think that you need to run out and yell and scream and fight for your rights, when yet, if you understand metaphysics, the more you do it, the more you're feeding it, and then the more it grows. So the occult, they tried to hide it, because by understanding that, you're not going to, by not understanding it, you're going to play into it and you're going to do exactly what it is they want you to do. And I'll just say they to generalize. We all don't know who they is. They is just, we'll just say they is the opposing force to humanity, whatever or whoever that is. But that opposing force, and that opposing force could be ourselves. I always thought
that cynical thought construct that you have within yourself. That's why, you know, we may want to try to go into a knowing or thinking of like, oh, you know, it's this thing or it's that thing, and this is how this functions. And it's like, well, make sure you kind of know, you have like your own understanding of even yourself, your own blocks, how you get in your own way and stuff, because it goes back to what you were just saying about the whole, you know, some sort of ruler over us. And we can want to say it's a government or a political thing or some or Illuminati, whatever we want to say. But, you know, are we just kind of displacing the blame too? Are we making sure that we're looking at, you know, oh, is that just a cop out to not look at our own ways of not handling certain situations because we want to displace it and feel like we're oppressed in some sort of way, you know? And it goes back to the whole victim mentality thing. So it's like, if you can get that in check first, then it's like, yeah, I think it'll be a lot smoother going into the knowings and understanding of, say, the occult stuff and the workings of that, and you know, where we actually are, what we actually are, you know, how the energies work and everything like this way you can remove those blocks, you know, when going into this. And so you don't fall victim or trap to some sort of type of entity of, or whatever they are, or that type of consciousness and that type of construct.
Yeah. And people must be reminded consistently and constantly. And I constantly watch the world discredit certain ideas and things, when yet, if let's say you are you're religious and you believe in God, you are believing in something metaphysical, or you're believing something beyond here. If you believe in energy, which you don't believe in energy because energy is real, because we wouldn't have this computer on and all these things happening, and that's not there, but yet it happens to have a function. We experience synchronicities. So that's another thing that happens that we don't see, but I think we can all admit that things happen in certain instances that are beyond our understanding. And if people think that we've arrived and that's it, no, it's breaking through the barrier and understanding that your limitations that you've put yourself through when it comes to what reality in the world really is, or what it could be doing, it needs to be dropped. You know, the measure of true intelligence is the ability. And I laugh because so many people think they have this, but the ability to drop your belief systems, to suspend them for the sake of hearing something else and letting it process and learning it, whether it's true or false does not matter at first. And I watch so many people immediately jump to that they know what they're talking about. And that's not the way to learn. It's not the way to invent. It's not the way to evolve. And most of the world has been duped, and they've been suckered in to thinking this is all there is, and that the system is all they need. And of course, I think the ones waking up now are the ones going through the most pain, because the pain is so great that it's like their feelings inside are erupting, and they're like, this has to be false. We're being lied to. And of course, this happened to you and me, Gio, way earlier on. A lot of other people went through it. And that pain leads to like, well, no, now I need to understand. And by understanding gives me power. Knowledge is power, or the application of knowledge is power. And so it leads to what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's why I feel it is important for us to bring this up and discuss this, you know, even though we've touched on a lot of things in these areas.
Oh, we're going to do it over and over again. Get used to it.
Always. But because you're going to see that, like, even with that, you know, we always say too, like, that you can come to this type of dark night of the soul, and, you know, you could either completely plummet from it, or you can go into some sort of buildup. But, you know, you're still kind of in a way vulnerable during that buildup. So it's easy to be misled and think that you're being led, you know, the right way, or that you're getting it, or you're onto something. You know, you're not necessarily learning the discernment within that, and within, you know, some of the information, you know, just because like certain things resonate with you, like, you know, you're kind of still, I want to call it, like, during that time, you're kind of still going through a spiritual buildup of like trying to, you know, strengthen yourself in that sense. And you may not be completely there yet or feeling that. So therefore, it's easy to kind of just latch onto something, and not realize how you may be repeating a cycle or starting a new type of way of going besides the journey of which you're trying to go on to the thing that you're trying to accomplish within yourself. And you start going again outside of yourself, and you start seeing, and then it falls to another plummet, and you wonder why you're having another dark night of the soul. And then it's just kind of like burying on, insult to injury. So, and then it get harder and harder. If you can kind of have even that type of inner sort of awareness as you're going through it as well, I think it does make the journey easier. It does make the work easier too. And it doesn't have to be. And we always said all the time, it's like, yeah, simplify, simplify, simplify. It doesn't, as I'm seeing even for myself with a lot of things don't have to be as complicated as sometimes we think they are, or that we make it. And that's something to keep in mind.
Well, we all like to dramatize things and make things like that because it makes it more epic, but I think sometimes it's just getting down to the simple point, especially with something this important, like the quality of our lives, where we're at today and what we're dealing with. And the fact is, if we don't at least try to understand and attempt, and this is another reason why I cannot understand people who tend to go on certain truthers threads, whether it's the flat earth, whether it's spirituality, gematria, it doesn't matter. And even a lot of the truthers themselves degrade the other truthers, which is ridiculous. Is if we're all on the journey together to discover the truth, the arguing and bickering and fighting, which of course is human nature, and Mars is in all of our charts, but it's definitely something that has to be balanced out. And of course, opposing forces are great because the friction creates something new. And I get that. But I think we have the wrong type of friction. I think we have to allow ourselves to think differently. And if you think back in history too, every person who invented something absolutely groundbreaking and important, things that we still use today, they were thought as nut jobs. So of course, it's going to come off insane with certain concepts and ideas. But what you could do is gather facts. You could gather experiences. You can gather certain knowledge that comes from the ancients and religions and stuff like that, combine it with science and try and 2 + 2 = 4, that type of thing. So we have to consistently do this and stick together on it. And I cannot stand the truth channels that tend to smite and push away other people because they're they're on another topic. And I cannot stand, and Gio, I'm not even going to say his name, but there's certain people out there that will call other types of truthers retarded, and even in a more aggressive way. and I get why, because I guess it's frustrating for certain people that can see through certain things. But never think you know it all. Never think you have it all. And of course, you have to understand and be compassionate with other people. That the programming, if you understand the mind, understand how things work. Obviously, there's a way that people became the way they are today. And if they are closed-minded, if they don't believe in something, this is development. It happened to just develop that way. So it's like, well, that's another thing we have to be careful with. Not only the information we're learning, but how we present it, who we present it to at the time. And if we could do that, we could build systematic ways to wake people up in the right way. It's going to take being open-minded and compassionate. Yeah. And that's that's like a call to arms.
Yeah. And literally, we know that, yes, of course it's frustrating, but like, think about it. If you're sitting there, telling a kindergartner, hey, multiply 60 times, 47, whatever it may be. And they're like, what? Just because that you can do it, or that other people can, it's fairly simple and stuff. What are you going to do? You're going to get mad at the kid, call the kid stupid and stuff. And then we know what kind of repercussions that does that have for that person. They have a sense of lack of self-confidence growing up now when they're in their development. And this goes the same thing for people in this community, and people like of what you're saying, that that'll kind of come down on that type of on those type of people, and that are kind of at a certain level already, and all you're doing is making it counterproductive. And they're just sitting there now that these people stay in that inferior state, where therefore they tread lightly when trying to go into certain things, and especially if they don't understand it, and maybe just have the sense of giving up and don't want to look further into it. They have the interest, they have a sense, but they're not feeding that sense. Instead, they start feeding the very thing that they want to get rid of.
True. Yeah, and the nothing is. Let me say this too. There's nothing in this journey of knowledge that's more important than the other. There's nothing. Because yet, if you go and search for something and then you do years of research and find out it was wrong, it wasn't a waste of time because you discovered that it wasn't the truth, which is still discovering and actually putting you and pushing you towards the truth. So if you're on some sort of journey, if you're interested in some topic, if you are gravitating to something, who knows, the discoveries that a person can make through being wrong could lead to the right. And I think we know that. I mean, that's even in success books where it's like, you got to fail 15 times. And then on the 16th, you succeed. And so that's why we also can't judge people where they're at. It's just a matter of like, what channel are they on? What I'm seeing it as grades. Like you said, right? Kindergartners believe in Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. So let's say if you took religious people, there might be a kindergarten way, frequency, vibration to look at a religion. And so they just happened to be in kindergarten and never passed. They stopped looking because the teacher said, well, no, this is all you need. Just stay in kindergarten. Yeah, there's no reason that all that other stuff, first grade, second grade, it's evil. You don't need to learn that. It just stay here. You can stay in my class. We're going to switch to teachers every 4 years. And that's it. And then people got caught up in that. And that's what the system told you to do. It said, stay in your grade. Some people made it to third grade. And then let's speak truthers, like, Matt's video, Quantum of Conscience. Matt McKinley said he had a video of the 12 grades or whatever of truther. And I loved it. And I mean, even him thinking that those grades were correct, I could disagree with some of them, or at least the idea was right. But it's a matter of being the compassionate person to understand who you're talking to, what you're saying to them, and what you could potentially be doing, when yet just plant the seed. They're not retarded. They're not being duped by the screen, as he would say. Obviously, that can happen. They could be tricked by their own truth discovery into staying in the grade. And so you just have to be compassionate. And another part of this podcast and this channel is to transcend even that stuff, to transcend the ability of getting stuck in the grade and just opening the door. If it's the most tiny bit, just gets a person just a tiny slither into the next level, into the next grade, because that they'll start the thirst and they'll start the wonder. And that's what happened with us. That's how we are, where we are today and where we're at. And we are nowhere near graduated.
No, exactly. And we're still human too. And there's times where we could be more compassionate than other times as well. But that's the thing. There's got to be a sense of a certain persistency to it, because even like that whole thing, even with Matt and the grades thing, like even though the concept of it was great, the whole demeanor towards maybe some of those lower grade, topics and truther things and the real meat and potatoes of
like
those
can't
areas.
You see it, that attitude. Yeah. How can't you see that? Right.
It's like, wait a minute, hold on. So wait. But you're projecting outwards, looking at other people and not looking at yourself, even in that present moment. In that present moment, you're not even taking into consideration the same thing that you're trying to preach about, where they're at and what they're looking at. And it's like, and you're what, and then it's like, ask yourself there too. Like I would say to him, ask yourself there, what is your overall goal? What is your overall goal? To plant a seed, or to wake people up, or to get people not to be sucked in by certain things and stuff? Aren't you not yourself then getting sucked up into maybe possibly something that the screen wants you to do, that you're sitting there and ridiculing people instead of rather trying to come and meet them at where they're at? And, instead of furthering the divide and creating more tension?
He claims that he's doing that. And this isn't a Matt bashing thing, but like, just to see, first of all, if you understand what he's saying with the screen, then you in my opinion, if you have strong enough willpower, that to not get caught up in the things he's saying, to get caught up, because basically what his belief is that reality in the matrix itself wants to trap souls here in a way. And there's plenty of religious doctrine and scripture about that. If you look up like the archons and the Gnostics and the reptilian thing and the false reality, and that this place is just a trap for the soul. And then you have more spiritual things about how, it's the cycle of reincarnation and you're stuck here until you accomplish it all and whatever it is. And so if you get stuck on, say, and this is where I slightly agree. I get it. Like if you get stuck on one truth thing, the 7-Eleven job application, the what's going on today and the masks and the whatever. And it's like that those topics of conspiracy, where he's right is that's not what is that doing for you? Are you asking that question? And if it is doing something for you, then you're not going to get lost in it. You're not, because it's for you, because it's for you. This makes me feel good. I feel, well, not even say good, but makes more like, wow, I know in my heart that I'm on the path. What if that's part of some people's path? And then he's there saying, don't do it. But their purpose could have been to keep going. So it could be more detrimental than not if it's said to the wrong person, and then you plant that seed where they were supposed to continue. And so as a person who's aware of a lot of stuff and aware of that concept, and Gio's the same way, I could speak for him, is we are highly aware of that concept and process that could potentially be a thing where you could get basically hypnotized into a subject or stay at a grade, even in the truth community. If you know that and you're aware, it'll never happen. I read so much occult and I read everything and I jump around and this and that. And certain ideas I could lick my chops. I get real, I like that. Astrology is one for us, Gio. That for you. I mean, you love it just as much as I do.
Oh yeah. There's been so many things that even lately, and I know I've talked to you about it, but there's been so many things that have like popped up and they're just so obvious and and yeah, they just almost like screaming like, yeah, like that's it.
From its bathtub.
That's exactly it. Whatever it may be, some sort of occultism, some sort of symbolism or whatever, or a functioning of some sort of hidden agenda or secret society, anything and stuff, like almost at a point where it's like, yeah, it's very clear as day that, or the connections to it are very clear. But even then, I've even had to catch myself to be like, oh, okay, hold on, wait a minute, revert back a little bit. It's not that you can't go into it. You can't. It's not that it's
well, a lot of it might be true.
Yeah, exactly. It could, listen, it could very well be true. It could not be true. It could be its own type of
Illuminati
agenda.
Use the Illuminati as an example.
Using what?
So the listener can understand. All right. So we're going to give an example. I want you to get the Illuminati, okay. Right? So you find out about the Illuminati. What happens?
Yeah. So it's like,
what would normally happen?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, like I'll see a connection, say something with the Illuminati, and let's just say some type of thing that we see nowadays in the world, and
symbols.
There's clear traces back to an evidence to this whole like Illuminati functioning way, and we see how it connects to something that occurs today, right? Even though that very may well be true and the evidence is there and everything and stuff, I'm even taking now with this, this understanding, this awareness, and being like, hold on, wait a minute. Yes. Okay. It's clear as day. If I'm understanding the whole thing of where energy goes, attention flows, or something like that, right? If I'm taking that in consideration as well, I'm taking in consideration that the screen may, there may be something put there in front of us to kind of follow, to stray us off the path, whatever it may be. I'm taking a second to really question myself of why I'm going into it. What's really sparking my curiosity? Why am I really interested in it? Is it for some sort of, self-validation? Is it for some sort of like wanting to find the bad guy, like a
help
mission,
the world, right? Save the world from the bad guy. I know that's a lot of us.
Or is it just me, or is it actually me finding some sort of my own inner truth and my own understanding of working of things within myself, and maybe creating some sort of some sort of excitement or curiosity within me to explore something within myself? Or is it just all external? And that's the thing where it's like you have to kind of differentiate. And even if it is something that's more external that's going on for you, it's like, okay, let me see how I can take that and revert it back to something about me, how I go about my daily life, how I understand things, how I look at things, how I treat other people, whatever it may be. And you can find that with almost everything that you do, and that's where it's like us talking about these egregores is like to get a better understanding. And it just to like kind of reiterate too, again, like the whole thing about egregores, if anybody like didn't, just catching this and stuff and didn't catch when, you explained it last time, it's the whole thing of the entities, these entities, whether physical or not, whether it's just a force of consciousness or anything,
it's an occult concept.
Yeah, exactly. It could be. Yeah. So it's like, if you read mythology, you come across a city, sometimes a city or a nation's egregore, many places were
Football
or are
team.
protected by deities, just for example.
Yeah. Football team, political party, a group mind dedicated to a thing. Yes. Charity, football team, or political party, nation, a babysitter's club.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Parent teacher conference.
Parent teacher conference, a school. That's a big one,
Yes, exactly.
Why do you think colleges are always has their ideals? They're always, some of them are like in football, in college football, a lot of them are always winning all the time, attracting the best players and all that, and then bringing. Why is that? Oh, well, it's because they're a good school. Yeah. Not in the occult sense. If we look into this, which we are today, is in the occult sense, this is an entity. This is an absolute entity, and it's developed by our thoughts.
Yeah. And just like all these egregores, they're all boosted by some sort of human admiration, dedication, worship, rituals, offerings, whatever it may be. And some of the things to keep in mind when it comes to egregores is that it's obviously an egregore is formed whether it could be two or more people that come together in common thought, belief, and perception of some sort of necessity. And then the acts of devotion, association, ritual feed, that all those things feed the egregore, which exist in the material, astral, and celestial, the ether, all that, right? It's just an overall thing of the construct of our reality. And it's not always, it is not always clear to initiates or just general members that actual intentions of forming and perpetuating a specific egregore. So sometimes it's being fed without it being known, and this is the thing that we're talking about. And then that's the other thing. Egregores can be dispersed without continual energetic boosting, though. So
without continual, once it's big enough, I feel like, and this is the concepts I've understood it so far, is it could, once it's big enough, it could almost live its own thing out. So like, let's say back in the ancient times, right? There was a deity that they worshipped, and there was so much energy and adoration given to this deity. And this deity has certain principles, certain attributes. They did it for intentional reasons to bring and manifest something into the physical realm. And this deity, which was a thought form, an energy form, enough energy and emotion and time and intention put into that thing, it can then kind of just live on throughout the astral. And before you discredit this, let me just say this too, before you discredit it, this is how we find new things or new old things, is suspend your belief on, well, how does it work? What is it? How, what would be the science? What's your proof? Understand the idea first. Yeah. That's the ability to think and to understand comes from also the ability to listen. Someone make a fucking meme for that for me and mark it Paradigms, because that's my code name. That's a fucking meme right there.
I mean, just go look at your fucking stained glass window. Just go look. Just go look at certain people, certain groups and stuff like that, how they're all chant.
Why does the Pope wear a penis hat? Well, a fish hat. Well, yeah, it looks like the tip of a fucking wiener, but it's actually a fish hat. Why would a guy who is supposed to be so important, who is so important to so many people, wear a fucking fish hat? You think he does that for fun? Or do you think they believe? So, and so let's not believe in an egregore right now, but do you think maybe that if these people live by these principles, that they're actually abiding to certain principles? And so without saying, is it real or is it not, that if we look at the world and we look at the symbols, if you're one of those Illuminati people, Jesuit, whatever, and you see the symbols and all the things, you see it showing up consistently and constantly, and you're finding it and you're like, yeah, and I bet you're right. And everything's out there. Look at the back of your dollar, all of it. We get it. Don't you think that could be an important thing to just keep your mind on, or at least in the back of your mind, and study and listen, like keep learning about it until you're like, well, it's absolute bullshit. The fact that it's so prevalent around our earth tells me, as someone who wants to learn and then does research, that I should probably keep understanding this until I'm to the point where it's like I get to make the choice, but I've understood it completely.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. So let's stop looking at maybe some of the, so let's just take what you said about the Pope and the fish hat, right? And it's like, people could be like, oh, well, Babylonian times and the ancient gods, and, it's linked to Poseidon and, the Anunnaki and everything and stuff. It's like, wait, hold on. That's great. You can go further into that, but hold on. Let's think about something a little bit more simpler in a way, but then can be complex in its own sense of, why was some sort of principle even just like that, or tradition just like that, even passed down? Why is that something? How did that carry on, through the time and stuff? How is that something that can in any sort of way be beneficial, or needs to be some, or what, you're thinking too much into it, it's just tradition? And it's like, well, but why adhere to traditions? What kind of psychological developments happen when we adhere to certain traditions? Why we go along with certain principles? Kind of what kind of makes up the psyche when that occurrence is happening, or when we're acknowledging that those traditions are being valued and they keep going and stuff. You know what I mean? So let's look at those details maybe first before going into the whole hoopla about everything and stuff. It may very well be true, but hold on. Let's look at the more mental aspect of it, of how that kind of happens on a psychological level.
It's funny because I'm glad you brought up psychological too. So even if it's not going to be, so if you don't want to believe in the spiritual aspects of it all, that it is just tradition, that it's, that it's just made for people to, it's a symbol for something, and maybe it does something to the psyche. Okay, fine. But if you go deep enough into psychological works, the works of, say, Maxwell, the guy who wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, or the guy who wrote, actually Carl Jung wrote Man and His Symbols, right? Mm-hmm. And supposedly these things to the human mind are, they're talismans. They activate something. There was also Alter Ego. I forget that guy's name. I never even finished, or actually I got even halfway through that book, but there's a book, Alter Ego. It's a yellow cover. And he talks about how he would bring things to like, if he was having a family gathering, he would bring some sort of item, which would be a symbol to activate the dad part of him. And then when he would go to work, he would put on his glasses, and he wore the glasses because he called them the Clark Kent glasses. And he said, well, at work, I would feel like Superman. And that thing activated a part in the mind that would almost kind of activate an alter ego. And if you're deep into dark occult, or if you look into Illuminati stuff, that with videos with like Beyonce or Kanye West or whatever, all these artists, these big artists that are supposedly in that club, claim an alter ego. Nicki Minaj, I think, is actually probably the most obvious one. She has like 5 of them, right? Mm-hmm. Something like that.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know as far as
she does. It's like Roman, and I only know this.
Oh, you mean the alter ego? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, why am I saying this? It's like, well, the hat, right? The fish hat. Is that getting him in? Is that an act psychologically activating something? If you don't want to go as far as believing the astral realm entity of an egregore, or as reality transurfing would say, a pendulum, which is the same exact idea. So it's like, if you don't know enough about a subject, don't discredit it. And if you're in the works of trying to discover truth, get used to this. Get used to things at first maybe sounding like, ugh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Give everything a chance. If you're sitting there just studying gematria and you don't really look much into anything else, of course your only truth is going to be gematria.
Yeah.
So
That,
you like open your mind.
yeah.
It's important.
And I think that's why like that whole thing with going into maybe more of the psychological aspect is better, because there is more psychological evidence. First of all,
Mm.
there's things that can be very similar that you can actually test when it comes to that. Like, just even just some of the things you're saying, like it activates the performance almost of whatever type of energy that's trying to happen. And there's also, there's a lot of neurological experimentations that really do show and prove this stuff. This way it helps you grab the sense of the validity of maybe all of this that seems supernatural or whatever it may be, and then once grasping that concept, understanding it even within yourself, and you can relate it to maybe some of your own things that you've got into. And then you can actually not just read about maybe what an egregore is, but actually experience your own shift into an egregore. And it's not that necessarily it's a bad egregore. There's good, there's bad. It doesn't matter. It's just the swing of how it works. So it's like, then once you can actually see and have that perspective on that experience of even just for yourself being in an egregore and stuff, then you can start to see maybe how some of these bigger ones work. And then even seeing what the real true depth of it is, maybe to get into. Okay, how like you might start to change, and I think you'll start to change how you start looking at certain fringe topics or conspiracies or whatever it may be. Like you just might see it a little bit in a different light, and it will most likely be in a light that'll be more beneficial to you and it'll be more fulfilling to you, rather than chasing your tail in a circle when it comes to Illuminati or Anunnaki or whatever it may be. So
Well, it would be better probably to understand the things at work than the things doing the work. I think the things doing the work is secondary. It's like, if you were going to learn to throw a football, are you going to just watch videos of Tom Brady throw a football, or are you going to go outside and try and learn how to throw the football first and then see how Tom Brady throws the football, because you understand the concept of throwing a football? So
yeah.
it's like any of this stuff, it's try and get down to the nitty gritty mechanism and why would they even do it? The why and how, I think, is probably more important than and the what would be more than. We're so focused on the narrative and the who. The who might lead you to the what and the how and the where. So go to their books they read, go to their studies. If you see symbolism, go read a bunch of books on that symbolism and look at all the perspectives you can. Don't just go get the negative one. We're good at that too in the truth community. Finding the negative side of, say, a symbol. It's like the swastika symbol is the perfect example of how many years did people think that was such an evil symbol, and then you go look at it, it was a spiritual symbol. It was the wheel. It's not all bad.
And it's so funny how even though there's people now that still know, like that actually know now about, more so the truth, I guess, of the symbol in that sort of sense, and know that it's not something that was created by the Nazis and stuff. Sometimes you could still see how people still have a kind of uncomfortability when either talking about or pulling it up or whatever and stuff. Like, just there's an uncomfortability there of even doing it. And it's like, why? Because like that energetic residue is still there. It's still planted within the subconscious. And you can see actively that you're still trying to fend off that old, that old way of it being represented, that has been imprinted on you for so long. And so if you could see it with just that alone, then, then you can start to see it, how it applies elsewhere in your life. So when we say like going into the details in that way and the psychological part and stuff, and like you start to do that, then it's like the next thing is like, that, yeah, okay, it is possible to direct them, direct these egregores for a more beneficial effect, but we have to like ask to whose benefit. What is the what is beneficial to one person or group of people that may be detrimental to another. when it comes to these sorts of things, and then even what's beneficial for me, what's beneficial, what's not, how could it be detrimental to me? I think those are the things that we don't ask ourselves, because there isn't a clear cut understanding of that. Hey, we can be feeding our energy. We could be feeding something or giving our energy away to something that, we think is just, oh, we're just exploring a topic, or we're just looking into something.
Let me say this. And I think again, we'll speak for both of us and more for myself, but I'm pretty sure you'll agree, is why am I doing this? Well, in my eyes and in my heart, I know that knowing things gives me awareness, which then gives me control and gives me power over my own life. And I will choose specific subjects because if I think something's affecting me, why would I go deep into the occult? Why would I go deep into astrology? Why would I go deep in? Because I see it being used and by powerful people. And how do I know that? Well, any first grade truther could tell me that. So, and is it a ploy from the screen to distract me? I will find out, because I'm not so embedded into all the stuff I study. I don't become who I study. I just am. And the things that I read and I consume is always becoming a part of me, but to integrate for me. Am I gaining something from this? And it would be smart to always ask yourself the question. And by the way, I'm no guru and I'm no God to say I'm right. But I just think that all right. So how is that affecting me? Well, the way people are acting in the truth community, where we're going as a race. And I just think our thought process, to me, from what I know, is hindering us, and our judgment of each other is hindering us. So in what way can I help solve that? And I know you feel right the same way.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Because that's, kind of the next thing I want to go to is like the whole fact of, now when we see it in that light, even when it comes to ourselves, now I think it is, then if we can kind of realize those things within ourselves, and maybe like we were saying about, okay, why are we doing this for even our own reasons? It's like, okay, now let's look at other people, since we can kind of say that, people are just also a reflection, a mirror of ourselves and stuff like that. So it's like, why affiliate with groups in the first place? Why affiliate with these types or egregores? Well, it's like, we can ask these certain questions, like, what needs are we looking to be met? What are our expectations? We are not only talking about occult or esoteric, religious, or political groups. There's like examples on, like we said before, the whole thing, like, a school or something like that, parent teacher association,
I saw it most in football teams, because I love football.
A sports team.
Every time I met an Eagles fan, and I'm going to use the Eagles, but there's plenty there. It goes Patriots, whatever.
Yeah.
Even a Tampa fan had a personality that seemed to be a collective personality. When I would see a Tampa fan and we start talking about Tampa, it's like it's almost a download happened to occur. They're still their own person, still their own personality. There was a language being spoken. There was a body language. It's like we were a collective mind. You go to Eagles fans, for me, is like, there's this snobby, like whatever. And I got plenty of Eagles fans friends, but I'm just saying, when you start talking football with them, there's this like grimy, dirty energy around Eagles fans. Sorry, Eagles fans, but I'm not sorry, because you really
trust me. I did.
Well, you're a Giants fan, so,
any person who's into football you talk to, and you say to them like, my team is playing the Eagles in Philly, this week. Oh man, fucking every time you go to, there's always a fight, right? You turn around, there's always a fight going on.
Pittsburgh and Philly, yeah,
at an Eagles game.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, that's a perfect example. And then you could, honestly, here's another good one I just thought of, right? The music scene. I was in the metal scene for 10 years, something like that, right? 7 years. And when I would go to shows, it was the same 5 pairs of shoes, the same types of girlfriends and boyfriends, the relationships, the people, they all like had a certain due. And there was this boundary and box within that of certain types of personalities and thought structures, and they'd all watch the same movies. They'd all have the same attitudes about things. And you could say, well, yeah, of course, because, they're alike, they're whatever. It's like, well, no, on a metaphysical level, this is what we're talking about, that there is some sort of information structure, some astral structure where our minds, when a surgeon goes and cuts your brain open, and if you told him to get the depression out of your head and you cut it open, he's not going to find the thoughts. Where are they? And if you tell me they're in the neurons, that makes no sense. It is the truth, but it's not in the, it's in a counter space. That would be considered the astral. For example, we're connected to the internet. How does this just pop up on my screen?
See, that's where that's where we make the connection of being like, okay, so say if those electric currents through our neurons are the things that are processing some sort of code, our brain is the computer that's translating the code of whatever it may be, and whatever function of our body is translating some sort of code that manifests into the physical in some sort of way, or manifests into a thought form or a belief or something like that. There's the proof alone. So if you have any questioning of this type of supernatural thing, let's not forget that there is very provable science to it. This is the thing that we're trying to make the connection with.
You're in Jersey, I'm in Florida. We're face to face right now. We said that on the podcast, like third episode. I'm like, people really just take for granted a phone call or a FaceTime is we are however many miles away, that's 1,000 miles away from each other. And we're basically immediately seeing each other, talking to me like, okay, Ray, old news. I get it. Like, not that, but like, so from someone who grew up in the 90s and like was dreaming of this, and then it becoming that, it's like, well, obviously then a lot more is possible. A lot of things we would never thought we would do or understand came to be. And it is still impressive. The problem is like, of course, when people are growing up into it, of course, it's like, this is normal. It's whatever. But like on the microscope of what's happening really is magical. It's magic. It's insanely spectacular. And we take for granted that. And so what would be the point of me saying this is, well, the same thing with your thoughts and the same thing with your Wi-Fi and all this stuff is like, there's this field of information we do not see. And there obviously has to be a medium. What the hell is that medium? An ether.
Yeah.
And what is that? That's counter space.
Yeah. So that's why we're saying get rid of the pre-grooming of, these pre-groomed thoughts and ideas and what we these definitions of like
preconceived
occultism, magic, like all those things. Like, get rid of those.
Those are words representing something that people do. The word itself isn't the thing. So if you hear the word and you cringe, I get it. Like nowadays people hear God and they go, oh God, geez.
And that's the thing. It's like, that's the very thing that is getting you to like help you wipe the slate clean a little bit so that you can now be like, oh, okay. Instead of being so, conditioned to those terms, meaning those fictional or woo-woo type of things and stuff, then because those fictional types of way of thinking, if you're taking it in that way, your subconscious is going to almost dismiss it. This is the part of exercising that part of the brain, exercising that part of the spirit as well, to be able to be like, okay, wait a minute, it's more than just that. It's not some nonsensical type of thing as well. So it's like this is where we're trying to say this is the roadmap to better being able to go into some of these subjects. There's a lot of people that go into this stuff already. This is not some brand new news. This is not some rocket science either and stuff, but I think it's not talked about enough when it comes to a lot of the information that we're constantly seeing. And I'll also get into that in a second, but back to what I was saying about the whole thing of like why we affiliate with groups in the first place. We said like even street gangs, that's the whole that whole thing, artist circles, all that.
The language they use, clothes they wear.
So some people may join groups or organizations because they believe consciously or subconsciously that groupthink is more trustworthy than their own, safety in numbers kind of thing.
Strength.
So some people are afraid of making the wrong choices. And that could be because they are told by someone or some sort of status quo or authority or group that their choices are wrong. I believe it takes more strength than we realize to call to our depths in order to accept our choices and then stand up for who we are and maybe being more than who we are. and without needing to defend it or making others wrong in the process. So everyone has some sort of passion, some sort of passion drives, to the exclusion of others' opinions and their well-being. But in these passions, I think it's important to pause and speculate on our motivations and the origins of these passions. What are we really striving for? Is there potentially a covering or ignoring of a deeper fear that we may have? We're so angry, we're so angry, frustrated, annoyed, or bothered by other people. Is that something that we're experiencing? What is the process?
Probably projection.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't realize that we're doing it. It's hard for us to accept.
I do it
that
too.
we may not want to accept or think that we're doing that. And that goes along with our ego as well. But it's like, what is this process of classifying others as people not like me? These are the things we have to ask ourselves. So with so many polarizing issues that have been fueled further by vested interests and the old guard and strength division of that strength division, it's a lot more important than ever to ask ourselves these details in order to dismantle our own negative patterns and draw back the power we give to these other entities or these egregores. So it's like, this is where we start to be able to see, because then if we can kind of destruct that, even if it takes us having to look at other people and why they get into these types of groups and they affiliate with these type of ideas, then we can start to see, because we're looking at the psychology of it. And this is very, Scorpionic in some sort of ways, and very Pluto Scorpio as well. So this can be a generation that's really good at this as well, to really go into the deeper psychologies of it, to maybe look at our own deeper psychologies of why we may even go into certain things, why we may, stray away or go to, or, and whatever the outcome may be on those things. It could be good, it could be bad, but it's a better self-understanding.
Yeah. And I'm big on, I've always been a pattern oriented person, and I'm big on parallels. I notice a lot of parallels in knowledge. So if maybe there's some sort of idea or concept you hear that's somewhat crackpot to you, and you're a scientific mind, and yet I could go and find something that was used in ancient teachings or the occult and say, oh, well, this is the same thing. They're saying the same thing, but in different language, which in turn language is just a symbol to get you to think an image, to get you to think an image. So it's like, well, what symbols am I using? What language am I using to say? And maybe is certain people need to hear it in a certain way, in a certain language, but yet it's a parallel. It's a parallel. So I have a perfect example, because I was looking at this before. I'll share my screen here. Here's a great idea to give you, to give the listener here the idea that the same thing can be said in multiple ways, and it's the same. Whether you put it in some sort of right brain imaginative way of the occult and mysticism, or you put it in science. But there was a study done called the 100th monkey effect, right? Mm-hmm. So the 100th monkey effect was the spontaneous transference of knowledge throughout a species. Once a certain number of individuals has learned a new idea or action, it bypasses physical barriers, a mind-to-mind jump, a leap in consciousness. Now, on this, and I'll show everybody so no one goes down my throat here, that it's more than a myth than a fact, but experiments have been done, right? So let's just temporarily consider it a fact. So then if you go, and I'll do it in real time here. So if I go and look up the collective mind, right? So if I put in collective mind, I don't know if what I'm looking for is going to, scientists look beyond the individual brain to study. I'm doing this in real time. That this idea of the 100th monkey effect, and that there's this mind-to-mind transference. And then the scientists are studying something called the collective mind, which basically cognition extends into the physical world and the brains of others. It's the same thing. It's neuroscience to explain that, hey, like there's a collective mind of a nation. There's a collective mind of a football team. Now you understand where I'm getting at. It's like the idea of the 100th monkey effect, or the idea of the collective mind being studied in science, is actually the same concept in the occult as an egregore. The egregore just happens to doll it up with a story that there's this entity and a deity, and that these people are connected by the strain of ether of like into this information bubble, and you download the emotions, you download the feelings and the thoughts and the actions of these things. And if you've agreed upon this collective mind and say, I am part of that, then part of you becomes it. And it could feed off of you. You could feed off of it. Government's probably the best example.
Yeah, exactly. And
collective minds of the Democrats, collective minds of the Republican, right?
Yeah.
They all think and act the same.
And that's where these bigger scales of these things and understanding the workings of it can help get down to more of the minute ones, and then into maybe a more better understanding of, of just the workings of things that don't even maybe necessarily have to do with, what we're talking about when it comes to egregores. It just can go with maybe just understanding life better. Understanding, our own choices and things that we, discover ourselves a little bit more, our true selves.
Whatever whatever you need to hear, or whatever your brain's going to have a preference, so you're going to want to hear it in a certain fashion. Don't discredit something because it's being said this way. There might be another way to explain it, and it might be the same thing, or it might be discovered later on. Now, there is a lot of ancient teachings. There's a lot of occult teachings that end up being true in the future. So what would make you deny anything in that knowledge when yet so far there's been plenty that have just been reiterated and proven again and again, like where it's something that they said a couple thousand years ago. Some scientist in the modern day ends up discovering it and say, oh, well, that one prophecy or that one thing that this culture said was true. And it's like, well, then we have to take into account all of this stuff and not discredit it and try and discover what it actually is that they were talking about. Because in my eyes, I'm going to take all of it as, say, just pointing to something true. And are we interpreting it the correct way? Do we have the science yet? And if we do not, it doesn't mean it's bullshit. Like with atheists, with the existence of God, it's like, well, can you prove he doesn't exist?
Yeah.
No. Okay. So then why are you saying you don't believe in him? You don't believe in him. But, and don't give me the bullshit that's like, oh, no, I believe in something. Well, that's agnostic. If you're calling yourself atheist.
Yeah. And this is where we don't understand the true definitions at times with things. And this is why, like, we always say, oh, people lack critical thinking skills. I say it to myself. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to reiterate that. It's, critical speculation skills, critical questioning.
I said it months ago, right? Speculation is like, stay right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, that's
in the mind.
Because sometimes if you're questioning things, it can be more so of, like, say you're questioning yourself, it could be a lack of confidence in yourself. I don't want to, I don't want to say it in that way, lack of confidence, but speculation as to maybe there's more for you to understand about it, whether it may be on an internal scale or a bigger external scale.
Yeah, seek out the things that can make sense and try and put your own thing. And there's critical thinking. It's like, all right, I'm taking this thing that seems like bullshit, whereas this group of people said that this is not real and all that, which, and yet when a group of people says something isn't true, they might have an agenda to beat the other side. So if I have a group of people going, well, no, that's not true, groups are red flags for me. Now, communities, networks, I get that. Yes.
Especially groups and stuff like that, they'll allow the individualistic nature to come about. So like,
and I would call that a network. That's a network.
Exactly. Let that be something that more kind of guides you, or like that you can speculate on when you're entering maybe some sort of type of multiple person or group or organization type setting, and then so like just something I jotted down a couple things when it comes to like freeing yourself from these egregores and stuff. The one which we've kind of been saying already is disengage from the group or organization. And this can be challenging if it's like a nation, or perhaps it's where you've belonged since childhood, or your whole family is involved. It's important to address your fears around leaving and how your needs for belonging outweigh being true to yourself. So, that's, once again, it's an internal speculation. Yes, it's an external thing when it comes to a group, say family member or your culture or whatever it may be, your religion, political thing. But once again, it's telling you to disengage by going inward. This is where the whole inward thing is not just some, kumbaya
Right. You
type
know what,
of method.
dude, I'm really glad you said this, the whole questioning thing, because if I'm questioning something, there's a sense of doubt, which means there could be a sense of bias. If I'm questioning something, I'm probably thinking this might be bullshit. If I'm speculating, I'm going, I don't think I understand it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Because you're questioning it, you might be coming in with a predetermined type of a thought about it or idea about it and stuff. Or rather, if you're coming into speculation of it and stuff like that, you're coming in with an acceptance of it could be either or.
And words are important. We take language for granted. Like, it's like, okay, well, you just basically said the same thing. It's like, yeah, but and then you're being a schmuck. That's ridiculous. Semantics. And I get it. Right. Exactly. But I do think people should be held accountable for the language they use and how they use it, because yet you're impressing something on the subconscious mind as much as you don't think you are. And I've used this example 100 times, is when you're driving, you're talking on the phone. Who's driving? Well, that's your driving skills are impressed in your subconscious mind. When you're taking a shit, do you think about your sphincter and what it's doing? No, your body knows what to do because it's it's subconsciously, you just know how to take a shit. You just kind of know.
I like to speculate on my sphinctor.
Well, especially if, it's rashy and raw. Yeah. When you got the squirts after eating. All right. Well, look, you get the idea, right? So the unconscious or subconscious tends to retain things from repetition. So these things are being ingrained. So if you're using the wrong language or you have the wrong definition of words and then you use them, I mean, dude, language is our means of, like, it is obviously, yes, communicating, but language is the roadway. It's the traveling it's how we get to the truth in a way, because we're translating ideas and things to each other so our own minds can understand, so you can be on the same page. Language is very important. And even the little subtleties that you can see in that, from questioning to speculation, those are two completely different things in a way. They're the same thing, but there's a key aspect in it. So because if I'm going to speculate, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to try and understand it. If I'm questioning it, I just want to, I'm questioning the fact, is this bullshit or not? So, and more so, like, or questioning, the way I would take it is, should I even be doing this? And questioning yourself in a way, are you speculating the topic?
Yeah. It's like, why am I doing this? What is my reasoning? Is it something that's very, superficial maybe, or, or is it not, right. And who knows, even if it is something superficial, you could even speculate on that superficial thing. Like, does this have the potential of, yes, it may be superficial in origin, but is it potentially going to open something else up for me or close a certain door for me?
Right. So, and by doing this and getting back on topic here, so speculating the egregore, right? And if you haven't heard the concept, or you kind of have, or you're in and out about it, or whatever, you don't give a shit. Okay, fine. But if let's share thoughts here. You look at the world, and if you're a sports person and you see other football teams and their fans, you realize that there is some sort of aura and personality usually to them. Generally speaking, obviously we're all individuals, so there's going to be individuals, but there is some sort of collective mind, and I think we could see it. Same thing when I said Republicans, Democrats. You look at these people and you listen to them talk, they parrot the same stuff in a way. And well, yeah, of course they listen to the same news. Yes, I know, but it gets literal though. They're tuning into that frequency. They're starting to, their body language is the same. Of course, yes, there's always the psychological stuff. I'm not discrediting that. I'm not saying that's not a big aspect. But yet, what leads to these people making certain decisions? Why is the world so brainwashed lately? Why is it the fact that people don't seem like they have a rational process in their minds? People always say, it's like, man, the world's gone crazy. Well, let's take into consideration that this concept of an egregore is true, and that people are so tuned in to this entity, that to these principles, to this body of information, that they've lost control of their own thoughts. They've lost control of who they are. They are becoming the group. They are becoming the collective, and they're no longer the individual. And which is, by the way, in astrological terms, the dark side of Aquarius is becoming the network. It's becoming the group, opposed to being the individual in the group. It's like you have to come from that Leo energy of being your own Leo to balance it out. If you're full blown Aquarian, if you're fully in the Aquarian energy, you lack the Leo, and you need balance always. And the world, as we're watching it right now, is becoming this Aquarian imbalance, this new age, and people are dialing it up and all that stuff about the age of Aquarius. It's going to be 5D and we're going to whatever. It's like, even those dummies that are in the spiritual groups, they're talking 5D and the manifestation and whatever. It's like, egregores don't have to be a dark government. It could be that. Yeah. So, and that, why, Ray, why would that be dangerous? Because you're getting lost in it. It's not serving self anymore. There has to be a balance. To serve the self is to serve others, because, you know, you've most likely, if you're a human being, which I would hope you are, you've been given a gift. That gift is the thing the world needs. And if you're not focused on yourself and developing your own individual self and gift, you're wasting what was your God-given, universe-given, whatever I don't care about your dogma, belief thing. You go, you know, so we're told nowadays is like, you better be feeding the system. You better be feeding the collective. You better not worry about yourself. Stop worrying about yourself. Go to work and go do whatever. It's like, are we getting somewhere? In my eyes, it's like, I don't see humanity going down a great path. Wouldn't it be selfish if I just actually went along with it because I don't want to go through the trouble of going against the collective, of going against the grain? That's selfish
and possibly, you know, having your own individual failure, which when you really think about it, failure, there's no such thing as failure. It's only just furthering.
It's winning or learning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's the thing, is like, when you really think about it, no matter what, with any of these types of egregores, groupthink, anything, the way that it's always given momentum, it always has to come from certain aspects of the individual tapping into it. Like, it's always, whether it's a conscious or subconscious thing, it's always an aspect of the individual person, something within themselves, something that's personal to them, personal to their own feelings, and you know, and their own way of thinking, that relates to some sort of experience or perspective that they have, is what feeds it and fuels it within them to then fuel it outward into the world and back into the group, and it recycles back that way. So there's another thing, as far as when it comes to the whole, like, freeing yourself from this. There's a thing, it's called therapeutic blasphemy, or conscious desacralization, and it's described in the Priceless Jewel by Buddhist teacher Sanghara Shita. I can't even say it. Yes, I am reading this. Like I said, I jotted it down. It's described in that as transforming the unconscious resistance to and reaction against Christianity into an integral part of the conscious attitude. It's just using, you know, in the book, it was Christianity. I was using an example. Yeah. So in this way, a person can observe any unhealthy patterns created by teachings of the group. It's not only cults that restrain and forbid group members from having certain beliefs. Sometimes this control mechanism is more subtle. Whenever we strengthen our identity through the other, it's time to take pause. So this is why we keep saying, like, you can start to unravel the more subconscious type of restraint that are putting this onto you, and you can see where they're coming from, and then you can also have a better acceptance of it, you know, and this just helps you. And no matter what it comes to having to take that pause to look at it. And then as far as the last thing is deprogramming and taking back the narrative. This is reclaiming our sovereignty by reorienting our goals and life direction. Such a monumental task requires addressing the identity we have taken on, our belief systems, emotional investment, shared values, just few, for example. And it also suggests placing all associated items in a box out of sight for a minimum of 1 month. In that time, observe how you feel, what thoughts surface, and what happens when you focus on new possibilities. Taking back the narrative means finding your true story, rising above any limitations and restrictions the group had previously imposed on you. So there is something for people to put into practice with this understanding. I think we've very clearly identified this as even just how that kind of like function happens as well. And to really kind of show, I think there's a lot that we brought up here that allows people that can kind of take some examples that they could think of if they're just listening and be able to see that and start working with shit. And these are just some of the ways.
Yeah. And talk about parallels, because I had this saved up. I'm going to share my screen. Same kind of ideal here. So I found the book, and it's called The Alter Ego Effect, right? By Todd Herman. And so it says the power of secret identities to transform your life. So this is a self-help book. It's not an occult book. It's not really, it's like definitely psychology, but he talks about the self and the alter ego and how we create it. And so because human beings have this incredible ability to imagine, create, and decide, it gives you the opportunity to change something in an instant. And it has a diagram of the core self, and how funny, heart-based reality, right? Are you living from your beliefs, or are you living from your core? And so, and what put the beliefs there? It's good to be aware of that, and what's there motivating you. So, and in order, your core drivers, what motivates you on a grander scale. Do you even know that as a human being? Are you doing what you want to do, or are you doing what the system told you to do? And then you have the belief layer, this is where we would get the collective mind, and it's how you define yourself and the world around you. Or is it, if you were stuck in a collective brain, mind, is how has the group defined you and defined the world, right? And then obviously the action and the field of play comes in later on. But also, if you look at this, I told you, and I'm actually, great word here. It's a framework, right? So this is a concept, this is an idea, but it's the same thing you're saying. So it's a matter of finding something that's going to break you free, and realizing that there's also imbalances and stuff like that too. So you can always go one way or the other with the imbalance. So you could get so caught up in your alter ego, which most of the world actually have. Like if you think you're John Smith that goes to work at the shop and does this and whatever, it's like, well, no, those are concepts. So that means that you're defining yourself by a name given to you by somebody else, and all of the story that comes with it. And so by doing that, you're even actually performing an act of with an egregore by thinking you are what language tells you are, opposed to knowing self. So that would be the imbalance. If you're living too much in the physical and going by these concepts and these, say, so-called egregores, you're not doing the work for you. You're doing it for the thing outside of you. And by doing that, it's imbalance. And there's also the other thing where you have these airy-fairy spiritual people that get zen and disconnected, but these people aren't grounded. These people are so stuck in la la land that they think 5D is just going to appear, or the rapture is just going to be out. We're going to float up to the sky. It's like, what if you're inside? I love Matt's take on that. If you're inside and the rapture starts and you're just going to float through the ceiling, it's like, there's no meat and potatoes to those things. It's understanding these concepts. And then how do they apply to you? I'm the type of person where I need a little logic. It's like, well, if that happens, that doesn't make sense. Someone's got to explain this to me until it happens. I'm just in a state of suspension. So I brought this up because Gio had mentioned this whole, concept and idea, which is true. And then also thinking of the alter ego, how could you use these things for you, which then in turn is for the group, but you're individual. You're an individual in that group, that group.
Look where it goes back to, though. Look where it goes. There's enough that's being shown here that no matter what, whether there's some sort of change you want to see in the world or whatever, or anything, that it goes back to that cliche saying of be the change you want to see in the world. It starts with an individual effort all the time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be some outwardly thing that you're going to just be able to go out there and preach it and teach it and just do all that stuff. Like, it's the same thing, even though, like, as we're sitting here saying these things, this is stuff that before even opening our mouths to sitting down and talking about this and recording it, like, Ray, I know Ray does his side of things, and he'll sit there individually with his own thoughts, his own construct as the individual himself. Forget about podcasts, forget about anything, whatever, whether it's even the band. Like, there comes a thing. Same thing goes for me. It's like, no matter what, I have to ask myself certain questions, no matter what, going into things, in order for me to gain a better understanding of the thing itself, of the concept, of my own way of thinking of things, because I have to keep my way of thinking in check too. I'm not going to just latch on to just something and think that that's the right way to go about it.
Takes practice.
Yeah. So it's like, that's where it comes down to. There's enough to show that it's like, hey, as much as you want to go out there, as much as you want to join a political movement, as much as you want to, even, I'm going to even go this far and say, is because we know that when it comes to maybe some sort of like more of like things that are happening within society, say our country or the state or town and stuff, like, and we say, go to your immediate environment, go to your town hall meetings, local elections, stuff like that. Even that, understand beforehand, before going out there, why you feel compelled the way you do about whatever the proposition is, whatever the type of law, whatever it may be.
It happened with you last year with me when you told me you went to the protest.
Yes, exactly.
I like immediately, because like I'm in the beginning of learning these. Well, I haven't knew about it for a little while, but I'm sitting there going,
I didn't think about that.
I hope he's going there because of him, not because of the girl he's with, or not because of the group. If he thinks it's right and knows it's right, but it's coming from this individual stance, it's not because, well, you know what, they're doing it, so I should do it.
Yeah.
No. Have you worked it out yourself? Is it because you want to do it and you have the reasons to, and you've worked out these intentions? You've speculated enough to understand this thing is going to be useful. I'm going to go around and wave my fucking Pishad in the air with a sign on it and say, free us. It's like,
I do that on weekends anyway, but
no, I do that daily.
No, that's good that you brought that up though, because I didn't even think about that.
That just popped into my head, actually.
Yeah, let's
meditating on that one.
I'll come be completely, and I'll reflect back right here real time and be completely transparent of maybe what was going through my mind and choices I made. Let's just say, one, I definitely, of course, there's certain injustices that I feel like that are there and available. And my thing, I was not going to participate in that at all. That didn't even cross my mind. But yes, I had my ex-girlfriend who, she wanted to we could even look at that. She wanted to participate because she had friends of color. They were going. She felt like she owed them an obligation to go. And because I remember having the conversation. I was like, why are you going? I'm like,
for them.
No. Yeah. I'm like, are you thinking about yourself, about the possibility? We see a lot of these other protesters have gotten violent. We've seen that people have gotten hurt. People that aren't even the violent ones or the agitators, how they get caught up in the mix. Like, I don't think that's a good idea, whatever. So, but besides the point, then it came down to the fact of, I'm not going to break down her reasoning because I'm not her, whatever. But my own thing is, with that understanding of seeing why she was going and stuff, and me having I'm conflicted about it, because in my head, I'm like, I do understand that there is some sort of, systemic disorder that has led us to this as well. And I wasn't even in the full understanding as I am now with a lot of things. But my idea of even just system, I don't even care. I'm going to say it openly. My idea is a systemic racism is not in the same sense of how it's being portrayed today, with these low level type of agitations within the systems that are causing it as well. Yeah, they perpetuate it. That's the egregore on its own, the system. And it's perpetuated even more by people, whether it's, certain police officers, the few bad apples you want to say, or certain teachers in school, whatever it may be. But that's, to me, I realized at that moment that that's not the main point of it. It's the construct of how this has been, the framework, what, like you just said, the framework of what has put this together to allow people to use their own individual experiences, perspectives, their own things, and they allowed it to sculpt and mold and fill in the framework of this very egregore of being systemic racism. So my whole thing about it was, yeah, I kept that in mind, but that's not why I was going. That's not why I was going. Honestly, real reason why I went was because of the sense that I was like, I don't know. There was a lot of confliction. Oh, are they violent? Are they not? Is it Antifa? Is it Black Lives Matter? What is it and stuff? I wanted to see for myself. I was like, you know what? I want to see for myself. And I want to be able to look at it. I want to be there real time and be able to see what's actually going on, what the energy of the crowd is, what the sympathy is, how people are interacting with one another, especially being in the, we're still pretty early in the pandemic, but I still wanted to see, because we haven't been able to see people's reactions to everything as it was happening. A lot of the times, just whatever you saw on the news or talk to certain people in your immediate environment. But the other thing was the fact that I also felt that the better reasoning for me to want to go, that was for more individually for myself, was the fact that, having certain medical background, understanding that there were certain, people getting hurt or whatever, and shit was happening and stuff. Not only that, my ex-girlfriend was going to go with or without me. And because I had a sense of worry of being like, oh, she can be caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time as well. And that made me also think about other people and stuff. I was like, you know what? I'll go so I can better keep an eye on her. It'll make me feel better. I'll get to see for myself. And there was a reasoning in that sort of sense to go in that way, and to stay vigilant, and to, almost in a protector role.
Right. So you had good intentions.
Yeah. And exactly. And the intention, why? Okay. So it's like, why did you do that and stuff? Did you want some sort of validation that you were a protector, or did you feel obligated that you had to protect her, or that because, you wouldn't have been looked at as like a man or something like that? No, not at all. Because I know that she wouldn't have cared if I didn't go. Maybe cared for other reasons, but not for the reason I wanted to go. But not also to be like, oh, it's my time to shine. No, it's about the simple fact that I felt like for once that there was something that I may potentially be able to do and stay vigilant of, just in case of something happening, whether it was her or other people or her friends, didn't matter. And to me, that felt more wholesome. That to me felt more so of a reason of why I wanted to go. But once again, it came down to, there's so many reasons, but it came down to it, my own individual thing of what was going to speak truest to me, and going on my own volition, not something else's or an obligation. So there's a little transparency to.
Yeah. And I didn't, it's funny because I didn't, that came up in mind because it's a good example.
That was a good example.
And, but the thing is, of course you explained that it wasn't for bad reasons. But what I see in it is, of course, it wasn't for bad reasons. I think we all have a lot of good in us. And I saw, I knew immediately why you went, and that's not saying you weren't being like, oh, you're, submissive, or that you needed to prove something. It's just that you saw how someone saw something and you said, it's a good point. We probably should. You're the type of person to say, hey, I understand why they're going. Probably speculated, but then at the same time, it was kind of like, you went with the flow. Now, a lot of people, if they're not self-aware, they'll go do those things. And let's say you went, right? And I never said anything. Let's say you didn't know me, right? You didn't have anyone to just talk about it with. And you went and you had a good time. That good time, you guys think you did something good. And maybe you would have. Maybe you wouldn't have. Probably wouldn't have. But maybe you would have, right? Let's say now a few months pass and now it becomes your weekend thing. And then it gets you nowhere. And then and then now that leads to a mindset where it's like, well, they stopped our protest. We got to do something else now, because you're all fired up. You're tuned in. That's your mindset, but you're tuned into that. That would be where the egregore comes in. Now it's got its hold on you. Now you want to stand up for justice and whatever. But in the beginning, what was it for?
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you doing? Do you see what I mean? How you can?
There's, and that's something
get lost down the line of like, well, I did it or because someone wanted to do it, and it wasn't really even like, at the end of the day, I could have probably went without doing it. It wasn't actually whatever. And it sucked you in with the emotional content, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Now you're going towards the direction of you're going now and participating to fulfill some, it could be the most minute kind of innocent thing as well, but you're going towards the direction of feeding some part of the ego there, you know, like I just mentioned, even before myself, you know, I had to make sure that I went, because I don't know, to me, it was a bigger deal about whether I go or whether I don't go. You know, it was something that I felt like, do I really want to be part of this and stuff like that? Because I had my own thoughts on things, you know,
right.
and no matter what, even if I was going just to look after my ex and stuff like that, there was still a part of me that was like not wanting an association with something, even though I know nobody was going to look at me a certain way or whatever and stuff. I mean, maybe people close to me, if they knew that I went and stuff, but I also had to question the fact of, you know, I said, right, I brought my med pack with me and stuff like that, just in case. But that was also the other thing. I could have been, you know, I saw how I could have been going to possibly feed some part of the ego of myself to prove something, you know what I mean? To be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like I want to, you know, I was also at the time wanting to get into, I had my EMT certification, and the pandemic hit, and I wanted to be getting into that, you know, doing that as a career and stuff. And I was like, oh, see if I, like, almost like, let's see if I got what it takes, you know, and I'm trying to like prove something. So it could have fell into that line too, of being like feeding the ego in some sort of way, or some sort of validation as well. But the thing was, luckily, even at the time, I did have that thought, and I was like, no, don't go. If that's something that's going to be kind of there and stuff, don't go for that reason. You know what I mean? And then it did help me to kind of go towards more decided, like, you know what? I want to see for myself what's really going on, what the narrative really is. Some saying that, oh, it's completely peaceful. Some saying it's completely violent, Antifa, whatever it may be. And what's crazy too, even with that, was that when I went, I mean, it was early in the day, it was a little bit earlier. When I went, it was completely peaceful. I mean, now I'm going to say physically peaceful. There was a lot of, you know, few people in the crowd throwing verbal insults and, you know, saying stupid shit, or, you know, whatever it was and stuff. But then, you know, whatever, we left. And then later on, you hear in that same protest that we went to that a small riot did break out, and there was an attack on the police. And then you hear the other side of it, that it was an attack on the protesters. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, even though, and I was like, wow, no matter what, there's still things that you just don't see. So let's try to remember to go back to, if I'm going to do something, I have to see if it's really, truly aligned with my true self and my own spirit. And let me make sure that I know what that is by speculating on certain things, by looking deeper into your own reasoning, your own bias, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's a great thing that bring up to dissect a little bit.
Yeah, because we all could do it. You know, I could give many examples of how I did the same thing, and we all do. See, that's the thing. That's something we all do in some sort of way. So it's all a matter of being aware of those things. And so this is where I love the occult, because if you do believe in this concept, say, and use it as a tool to, you know, even if it's some superficial belief of like, I kind of understand the idea of egregores and get it, but like, I'll use the concept and I'll keep it in mind. You never know what could actually help you, even if you don't fully believe in it, but you can like, yeah, the nudge, you know, like, oh, this is, yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. I don't get it. I don't feel like learning it, but it's a good, whatever. Maybe I'll allow that to change at least the way I think. I'll be more aware of it, or I'll look for it. You know, I'll seek it out and I'll see it in things and say, oh, well, shit, that one book said that's what that would be. And I could see it, you know, without forcing it. And of course that could be shaky, but more so is just, I still have the same stance that if something lasted thousands and thousands of years throughout time, there's something to it. And so all of this stuff that's embedded into occult knowledge has been around for thousands of years, and you could see it. You know, I really do think, without trying to force it or using your RAS scanner of the brain, where it's like, you know, you buy the Honda Civic, then all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's like, oh, well, there's a psychological fact that you get what you're looking for. It's like, yeah, I get that on a psychological level, but Geo 37 all year, the number 37.
Yeah.
Are we looking for that, or does it just have, or okay, I look at the clock, oh, it's just 30, or is it popping up in sports, TV, family shit, like that's what I'm talking about. That's not RAS. These things pop, they will show their faces if you allow them to. Anything.
Yeah.
An egregore. So
exactly. And like even for us with that type of stuff happening, like even just certain numbers showing up, it's not even, yeah, of course, sure. You could go look up, oh, what does this number mean and stuff, whatever it could be. And you can fall in line with that egregore alone of being like, oh, this number is this type of angel number and it means this and it means that. Sure, you can. But even that, I feel like we do speculate, that we sit there and we still speculated to the point of being like, why? Like, I wonder why that's showing up more, why specifically that one? If I was to change my thinking and start noticing, change my perspective, not even my thinking, change the perspective and start noticing a different number, or pointed out a different number that comes up and then start seeing that one more, is it going to be like the same kind of occurrence as well? And why may that be, and not false settling on some sort of, oh, well, it's this or it's that. I can't even give you an example right now because it's still an active speculation.
Yeah. But I mean, so after saying all that, it's like at these points of time when we're, especially us or other podcasts and anybody preaching some sort of truth or some sort of, you're pointing this at, oh, it's a conspiracy. Oh, it's a spiritual fact. Oh, it's about your chakras. Oh, it's about the Illuminati. It's just speculate and go seek it out yourself and constantly question or speculate things. But the thing is learn to understand it. That's why I say speculate. Questioning would be like, is it true? Is it not? Do I want to even do it? Do you care? Is there bias? And just try and understand the concepts. So, and I guess we could kind of sum this up, and I'll get my little paper out here, the things I saved I thought was most important. Because there was a few points I wanted to make. So, sorry guys. Let's see. I'm trying to move my thing here. There you go. Okay. So once again, and what's funny too, I saw this, I had to put it in there. So we didn't mention this. The word egregore is Greek, and it derives from egregoros, with meaning waitful or watcher. Now, the word is found in the book of Enoch, wherein it is described as an angelic being. The book of Enoch is ascribed to Enoch, the grandfather of Noah. And while non-canonical, right? I say it has attracted some theological and historical interest by the major Jewish and Christian denominations for a section of it known as the Book of Watchers. If you even specific occult or religious people, they know of the Book of the Watchers. We talked about that actually with the Anunnaki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So once again, these are autonomous psychic entities composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. However, there is a second definition, an older, more significant, and perhaps frightening one. Here, an egregore is more than an autonomous entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. It is also the home or conduit for a specific psychic intelligence of a non-human nature, connecting the invisible dimensions with the material world in which we live. This, in fact, is the true source of power of the ancient cults and their religious magical practices. Now, that says very adamantly this, in fact, but the thing is, well, in fact, that they thought that, that they practiced that.
Yeah.
So boom, don't discredit that. He's saying this, in fact, is the true source of power. Well, maybe the true source of power where they did gain power and did say, gain specific things for their tribes or their cults or whatever, thinking that power is true. I'm not trying to claim that the power itself is doing the thing. Who knows? We can't answer that yet, right?
Yeah.
So the modern scholar Jocelyn Godwin, she's a great author, actually. Check out all her books if you're into occult practices. She traces the origin of the egregores, and I love this whole thing because you could see it completely. To the West, at least in the West, to the semi-animistic beliefs. I wonder if that's animistic. Yeah, anima, maybe. Animistic beliefs of ancient Greece and Rome, and the intimate relationship that the ancient cult practices had on the daily life as well as foreign affairs. I'm pretty sure we can agree, at least on the Roman part of it, even to this day with the Vatican and the Pope, like we were saying before, of the ancient cult practices due to the symbolism and all of that. So this is critical because here we see that every aspect of life has a sacred component to it, and that in the proper execution of one's duties, the visible and invisible worlds are kept in harmony from the perspective of classical religion and with politics. And so with classical religion and politics, I'm pretty sure those two things are extremely in control of the minds of people.
Yeah, I would definitely think so, because like that's the other thing when you think about it, like it's essential to not be distracted in today's day and age with mass media, show series, influencers, productions. Like we've come to mistrust the news in general, and become so accustomed to all the media and entertainment put out that we often don't realize how much this is also the simple fact of it, but we don't realize how much research, studies, stories, and like narratives are formatted for specific means. So this is where we've come to like join social media groups and threads and taking on an anti or pro stance on something without understanding the workings of egregores and how our very actions, righteousness, and how our passionate viewpoints may be feeding into the agendas that we may not actually ultimately subscribe to. So this also just goes along with occult studies, conspiracy, psyop theories, all that stuff too.
Yeah. So
No,
I was going to say, so even if you don't believe, say, the occult thing themselves and what they're doing, these people tend to be using them, and you could see it all over the place. You see the symbolism. So in this presentation, I don't think we would be trying to convince you that egregores are real, or that that you should continue to look into them or try and use them or see whatever. Like, open to your mind to the fact that it could be a possibility, yes, but then also the fact that if you look around the world, that these things are constantly, this esoteric knowledge is constantly being used and placed in certain important architectures and and certain political groups and all of that, the Vatican, Rome. And it's funny because if you think about that, right? Think about the fall of Rome, and that's where in one of the books I grabbed this is, so egregores were supposedly formed to watch over city-states, the republic, and the empire itself. As long as offerings and devotion continued, the prosperity and well-being of the city or empire was thought to be assured. However, if new cults came into being and the energies of worship were directed elsewhere, the agreement would be broken, and the supposed egregore would cease to support the land and its people. Now, esoterically, this can be seen as the reason for the collapse of the Roman Empire, when its old gods and goddesses were no longer sustained by the mind and emotions and attention of the people. And then Rome can no longer gain its power and its support over the land, and then it would then start to redistribute itself. And with, like, say, the mystery cults, like it says right here, the mystery cults from Greece, from Persia, from Egypt, that these entities in this fashion, that these people thought this, were feeding that energy and giving that specific landmass and country and nation power.
Yeah. It reminds me of I mean, it's crazy because like that's even just the whole concept of Homer's epic of the Iliad with, the Greeks and the Trojans,
right?
As far as, it was seen to be that, they had there was the oldest son, Hector, who the king and the king and the queen had another son besides the oldest, Hector, and they had their high priestess because, obviously they went to the Greek god Apollo and Aphrodite and Odysseus, whatever it is, and they for those certain things, especially when it was love, especially, it was definitely Aphrodite. When it had to do with your children, it was Aphrodite. And when they went to the high priest or whatever and stuff, they saw during one of the rituals that were done, that they cut the dove's neck, that the blood ran black. So that to them was a bad omen. And it was told that hey, he's going to bring, this son is going to bring a damnation or whatever, or stuff like that, or there's going to be some bad luck. He's not going to be meant to live. It didn't even necessarily mean a certain thing. So the parents, the king and the queen, ended up making up some sort of story that the wolves came in the middle of the night and took the baby away or something like that. And then eventually the baby, who grew up being known as Paris by a shepherd, and was taken for his own, ends up somehow making its way back to the city. You know, they think oh, it's over and stuff. They given that to Alexander the Great. And you know, this whole thing comes on. So it was like thinking that it's over. And then the whole thing happens with the wife of Helena Troy and all this shit. And it's like, they subscribed to the fact, and they fed it even more by being like, oh, well, it's the curse of the gods because the parents did this and gave away. They never told, I didn't actually get stolen away like they said. And therefore it was like this perpetual, and even all the people subscribed to it as well. And like, it took the fact that it was like, he needs to go, he needs to die, or he needs to get the hell out of Troy, or else it's going to bring all damnation to Troy. And it's like one thing after the other keeps happening and stuff, especially with, you know, Apollo and Zeus, and they were smited. And it's like this whole fucking thing. And it's like, that's the very thing. It's like, you can grasp that big onto it, especially when if you know, obviously the Iliad and stuff, and you know that whole story of Alexander and stuff, like you see the series of events that occurs in that, and it's all based on an actual egregore of how they looked at certain types of, you know, symbolism, like, you know, the dove and what it meant when it came to that, and how much they subscribed to the gods, and how much, you know, it meant to offend a god or to go against the god in a certain way and stuff. And then it reflected on even the people. The people became disloyal. The people became worried and panicked
because their connection to the mental realm of the egregore.
Yep. And then eventually the people end up also losing hope, losing this. And what happens eventually? Troy falls. Everybody fucking dies. Like,
and what's happening right now in America, where people are losing faith more and more in the country, that you could say, like, okay, of course, logically speaking, analyzing with the five senses, analyzing the media and all that. Yeah, there's corruption. Yes, there's things going on that's making there tends to be a fall of America. But what's crazy, it goes back to my parallels theory. Not only do you have, say, this concept of the egregore, that you can compare it to Rome and Troy and all of that stuff, but also right out of left field here, you also have, astrologically speaking, you have Pluto having its return. So the sign, when America was born, Pluto makes its return back to that same spot on the chart, which then signifies death. So then how ironic and how weird. And so it's like, well, Ray, which one do you believe? It's like, I don't believe any of them.
Well, couldn't it also be its own self-sustaining?
Yes. Right. So, and by speculating, you're keeping everything on the shelf and saying, when I need to grab that out, I might need that later. That's an important point, because this might be a thing, and that the egregores are helping create reality or influencing the humans and all that, that maybe whatever the egregore is as an energetic entity or structure, that maybe, because if we would realize that that has some sort of effect, that maybe the planets themselves, I don't want to call them an egregore, but they are some sort of energetic structure that in turn has influence over the world. Yeah. Because they're a frequency. And so then when you tune into these things, so let's say as an astrologer, I'm having this realization as we're fucking real time, as you're having an astrologer tune into this, say, call it the egregore or the frequency of that deity or being or energy, and what we would call Pluto and the symbols of it and what it represents and whatever, they can predict or see what that egregore is going to do. And then in turn, maybe that's built into the matrix structure. It's not something that's good, not something that's bad, but it's an egregore, say, of the matrix story we're living out as souls. And by understanding astrology, you're actually understanding these things, and not to call any of these things good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think too, like when it comes to that too, with astrological stuff, you know, I also think on a more smaller scale, because of how much experience has been experienced when it comes to astrological events and all the different types of depictions over millennia of astrological things, I think there also can be an interpretation of certain things that can not necessarily manipulate the actual astrological energies or the celestial energies going on, but the interpretation can be manipulated on a more individualistic sense, which then can propagate into its own thing. You know, who knows? It could turn into a real big thing on a mass scale, or it could be something where it's just that one person is affected. But then you also think about that person comes in contact with somebody, whatever this may be. You know, they can be, but it's not necessarily the complete energies or the statistics of what's being said astrologically. It could just be the interpretation of it can be federal, and creating like its own sub egregore of,
Yeah, I think
of something
this
that kind of
construct
pulls that energy, but
yeah,
brings it into something new as well.
exactly. So, but this construct, well, I think it all is interplayed.
Yeah.
It's all depends on that. So like, that's like the foundational story, but then how do we work with it? And
Mhm.
so, and remember, egregore, the word itself is just a symbol, because
Yeah.
then when we have, and by the way, talk about in one of the books, he said, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. How creepy.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Speaking from, say, the egregores perspective. But also, why am I saying egregore is just a symbol? Well, reality transurfing is also the same concept as an egregore. You know, mental energy is tangible, it can't vanish without a trace. Yada, yada. Why does it keep doing that? When a group of people begin to think in one direction, their thought waves superimpose over one another. And in the ocean of energy, they create invisible but real energy information structures, which is called pendulums in this fashion. They begin to develop by themselves and make people follow their laws. Simply put, boom, there you go. You don't need anything else. Okay, how do they work? You know, they have a resonant frequency. So when I'm watching CNN has a resonant frequency. Why? Because the amount of the type of thoughts and the type of people and what that's being fed, and it's its own entity and it's on its own thing and it's all that. So maybe it's not the guys at the top, the evil guys. Mm-hmm. It could be this information structure, this rhythm of frequency, this living astral entity. Can you say? And why? Maybe we name these things like, say, the deities, right, or demons. Is maybe that we're just giving something a face. We're giving something a symbol. We're giving something a word. We're giving something that specific thing to then categorize it so we could be aware of it the next time it shows up.
Yeah.
But to be attached to it keeps it around. So there's that, like, but don't get attached to it, because the more you feed it, the more you think it.
Yeah. We're the ones who are we are the ones who are actualizing it, or the groups are actualizing certain things of however it manifests. And it could not even necessarily be the exact output of this, say egregore as well. It's getting actualized, whether it's within, because of the words, whatever type or symbolism, how, you know, what it possibly can depict, and then how we're translating it.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So
and
that's yeah.
Well, and this is just another one that shit's just coming to mind. It's like, so even the story of you. So say Geo, right? So people call you Geo, your mom calls you Geo, I call you Geo, whatever. Okay. Right. They're locking you in. The egregore of even your life and my life. So if I'm calling myself by the same name, right? And I don't have, let's say me personally, say my willpower is pretty weak and it's really hard for me to change. Right. And it's hypothetical, but like this story I tell myself by giving myself the template and the name and the idea of who Ray is or who Geo is, that if this concept is a real thing and it is working on things, right? So that means that what egregores are over your own life. And so the definition of what people think you are, or what you think of yourself, is its own energetic structure that's constantly feeding off of you, which is why it's actually so hard to change the ego and so hard to change your habits, because you've done something so many times and given it so much mental energy, it has so much rhythm that it's got its grip on you. Well, no, this is who Ray is. This is who Geo is. This is it, and by changing that story, having an understanding of this concept could give you a whole nother layer of, oh, wow, it could be working like that. I could see that too,
Yeah. The impact of certain things and experiences as well. It becomes fossilized, and then it's up to us to be able to really dig past the layers, unearth it, and manage it
Redefine
as
it, right?
well. So
Redefine it.
yeah, because if we're diving into these topics or these ideas or information, entertainment, or certain products that we're buying and stuff, it is best to just stay mindful of why we are doing it, and to just stay focused, and have not have this illusion about your needs and your desires. Own up to our wants, our needs, and curiosity, and then truly be able to reflect if it is for the reasons of true purity in fueling our soul, and something that can help us to become a better sovereign being in the end, or if it's because of wanting to keep up with the Joneses, or temporarily fill some missing aspect, or
Make someone else
inadequacy.
happy.
Yeah, and an inadequacy that we feel about ourselves. And just remember that fear, shame, guilt, anger, envy, and greed are very, very easy avenues through which other entities or beings can like override our knowing and frequency. And this goes right along with that whole thing. Once again, energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and to keep in mind, any concepts that help you see these things are valid. So if it's a religion, if it's an occult practice, if these results that you desire are coming about and you're aware of them and self-aware, you're doing it for you, not for the group, not for some demon, not for some, whatever. It doesn't, there's nothing matters other than the fact that you realize that you've named your mission, you realize this is what you're here for, and then you're doing it for that reason. And you've solidified it in your mind that that you are sovereign, not just sovereign from the government, or not just sovereign from, this modern day slavery. It's sovereign in the soul. And so you could look at it as also that the government could be our egregore of our society. And then your bad habits and your things that are preventing you from exceeding your own limitations in life and following your dreams, that's your own egregore. That's the thing that's feeding off of you in your personal life. All those different concepts and ideas and the energy you've put towards certain things that tend to repeat over and over again. And so the more that you say these things, the more they're going to exist. And then also the fact, the more you say that the government's bad and that the world's going to shit, it most likely isn't going to happen the way probably a lot of people think, but more so is you're not helping, because as much as you're going to say, that's true, I see it, I'm using my five senses to say the government sucks and the world's falling apart, this and that, and this person's a piece of shit, whatever. Just keep in mind that you could potentially be feeding on the metaphysical level and energetic level the thing you actually don't want. Yeah. And that thing will perpetuate and will continue. And have you ever noticed that when you bitch and moan about something, or that you constantly talk about something, that it tends to appear the way you most likely think it is? And then we just say that's coincidence. No. Yeah. What if there is a mechanism? What if we're looking at the mechanism? What if we're touching the surface of the mechanism? We don't know. And we won't know unless we continue and we allow each other to reflect and study and be who we think we want to be and all that, and stop with these labels and these stories and this gossiping, and truly allow ourselves to flourish as souls. It's the only way out of this. If you think it's signs and yelling and political parties and all that, you're in the machine. And there's nothing I could do or Gio could do to really help you out. It's all up to you always. It's becoming sovereign in your own self. And we can only try and be the conduit, the middle way, and say, hey, look, we've found personal sovereignty. We know who we are. We see it for what it is, at least in our own truth. And maybe we could help you. We'll give you a helping hand, or you continue on. And of course, there's never any judgment,
Yeah, exactly. Because other than that, we're if we're not, then we're just going to end up further solidifying these, solidifying the identities of these things that we say we don't want or that we wish would change and everything. And it's true. Yeah. Like you said, like most of the time when you sit there and you're constantly in the state of thinking or, fearing that you don't want some sort of outcome of something, most of the time it happens. The mind can't really, the mind in the field can't differentiate, what it is, so you can be thinking about what you don't want and still get that. And then you could be thinking about what you do want and get that too. The thing is, though, to keep away from getting the thing that you don't want is to, yes, of course, it's going to come up things that you don't want, but to have an acceptance that, yes, that's possibly there. But when you're accepting it, you're not giving it that sort of energy, and you're not fearing it and keeping it a dominant controlling thing within the field. You're allowing it to be like, okay, I accept that that's a possibility, but I want this possibility. There's multiple different possibilities, but I want this one.
Right.
I'm not going to worry and give all my energy to the thing that I don't want by, oh, man, I really hope that doesn't happen. Oh God, if that happens, I'm going to be so upset. Whatever. Like, no, you're basically telling the field that that's what you want. So instead, it's different. So you can have an awareness of that thing, but come to a deep acceptance of that possibility exists, but you're not going to divert your feelings. You're not going to divert your energy to that negative aspect.
Yeah, there seems to be a sense of false positive thinking. And if you haven't cleared it out of your mind or come to acceptance of it, that positive thinking is one thing, but you ever notice that it doesn't work? And why doesn't it work? Because your paradigms are running underneath the surface. Those egregores are feeding off of you. You're still, oh, well, if I think positive, it'll happen. No, what's going to happen is the combination of what you feel and think and whatever alchemy that's creating is going to happen. So if you could be positive thinking, but your emotions are saying, nah, probably not. And that resistance is going to be the result. So whatever the math is of your resistance to your positive thinking is going to be the outcome. So it's a matter of being self-aware, accepting things. And then by being in, by the way, the state of speculation is almost like there's this sense of neutrality, and you'll probably do a better job manifesting and gathering the life you truly desire by staying in that neutrality. And that's another good way, I guess, to say, when we say speculating, it's a state of neutral thought and not having some preconceived bias and saying, let me think about this, and I'll speculate and see both sides and see what comes from it and make a decision based off of your intuitive and logical combination. So there really is, it's a sense of alchemy, and it's whatever concepts can help you get that alchemy straight. And by yelling, screaming, and pushing and shoving the world, it's just, you're doing exactly the opposite. If there was something, say, generally to take from this, is by pushing against what it is you don't want, whether you want to call that some psychological word or you want to call it some occultist egregore or pendulum, it's true. And we can all agree on that due to personal experience. And we see it every day. And that whatever we resist will persist. And it's time for us to just evolve the way we think. And boom, that's basically my sum up.
Yeah. Yep. Just like, one thing I did realize, that I think I found one thing that our wonderful President Joe Biden has said is lower your expectations. But I'm taking it completely out of context. Lower your expectations. I mean, like, don't have expectations on how. I think
I like corn pop better, but
yeah, corn pop. But this is not at all how he was saying it, but I just was thinking about how he said, like, basically, and it's kind of funny now, they're making it a joke, like that's his new slogan: lower your expectations.
Lower your standards.
But it's like, it's don't have expectations on how the outcome ought to be. It's being able to have the expectation of what you're going to feel and how you're going to react by the outcome that you do want. Not that you're expecting that outcome, but you can expect the type of feeling, the kind of state you're in, the kind of benefits that it'll bring to you and stuff like that. That's what you can expect, not the actual outcome itself, though. And this plays into the whole of, how to actually manifest. I don't even like saying it even that way. I mean, I know it's just a general word and stuff, but like, okay, more so, I don't like saying like the whole law of attraction thing. Like, that's more of like part of the deeper truth of like actually doing it and stuff. You accept the possibilities of what it can be, negative, positive, whatever it may be, according to whatever outcome you want. And the only expectation you hold is the expectation of the type of joy that something's going to bring you, the type of thing, not necessarily. And that's the other thing too. Don't hold the expectation for the thing that you don't want, or how it's going to make you feel, or how it's going to fucking make things harder for you and stuff.
Oh, live in the end.
Then you're diverting the energy.
My whole thing is make it simple. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to happen, but whatever way it needs to happen. Yeah. And then I'm also not going to be some pessimist asshole about it. Say, well, the mind's always going to want to make it negative. That egregore doesn't want to die. And I love using it as a concept. I do, because it helps me symbolize that process, which is what a lot of myths and religions do anyway. So it's like my own allegory, the egregore of my personal repetitious thoughts, trying to get me to think that same way and expect a negative again, because maybe there's this invisible energy structure that wants to feed on me. So it gives me some sort of thing to conquer in my mind. And so whatever way works, it doesn't matter. But you are right. In the end, it is as simple as that. And that's really, to be honest with you, I know we were supposed to go into the Earth's grid and all that, but the next talk we do, I would love to talk about the Earth grid and magnetism. And then because last talk, we talked about how these things can be projected out. And a good chunk of this was kind of talking about that.
Yeah.
Is that these symbols and these things could be projected out into the minds and unconscious minds of people, into the collective. And then these things tend to manifest and give it power. So that I look at that as probably being the next talk.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, because to know that and understand, and to go into that understanding as well, this is important to understand. Like we said, look at the psychological aspect of how that's even functioning for us on these more, yes, there a lot of them are worldly levels as well and stuff, but on the deeper individual self, because with that understanding, we'll be able to make that connectivity now with some of more of those actual structured type, occurrences and the actual going into the frequencies and the buildings and everything and symbols, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think this just helps give that a clear understanding when we do go into it.
Yeah. And just try and understand it.
Yeah.
None of this is ever about beliefs. And if at times you catch us talking like we believe it, well, it's really hard to get around when you're considering something. Someone's going to sound like they believe so. It's a last thing on this. A lot of people in the truth community will yell at someone because they think they believe the thing they're saying. It's like, well, no. I'm aware of something and I'm presenting it to you. And the only way to present it is probably going to make me sound like I believe it. So always take things with a grain of salt and just try and hear the points they're making. And then so have some sort of recollection later on of like, they said this, did that, I mean, put it together and just try and understand it and make your decision after the fact. Real intelligence is measured by the ability to suspend your beliefs as you're learning something.
Yeah. I think we believe, if there's something that we believe on the whole act of speculating, believing that taking consideration on all sides is a necessity to higher understanding.
Yeah.
And an understanding.
Bob Proctor's video on paradigms, which led me to name my productions company Paradigms, by the way. So
with a Z.
With a Z. So even that is another way of seeing this. So whether your paradigms are running the show, your paradigms can be looked at as the egregore. But now we're talking in circles. But anyway, so that's basically it. We thank you for listening. Gio, anything else you want to add on?
No, just I want to try to maybe somehow in between or something like that, do a little small thing of just for further purposes, maybe as well, just kind of like taking maybe some more current things that, more specific, detailed current events or things in the news.
Why don't we? I forgot that you had gathered.
No, it's all good. I think that's great though, with what we've gone into and we've talked about. Now there's certain things that I kind of made note of. And that's why I'd also like to get your take on it as well. Some of these things, because maybe you'll see or speculate on things that I didn't, but I know there's certain things that came to mind and things that I was seeing. And yeah, some of them are pretty interesting. So we could just do a follow-up thing on that and go into maybe what we can see with some of these events that we're seeing right now, as a great example.
Yeah. And use real world examples so
Mhm.
people could then see that this tends to be, it looks like it's a real functioning, this is a real happening. I mean, if you were to
Yeah.
ask me personally, I do like speculate and then, but also lean towards, I see it.
Mhm.
And I don't think I'm delusional, but that's me. So whatever you happen to take, whatever your stance is, yours or the listener, okay. But I tend to love entertaining this thought and see it all around the world. And the fact that it's so prevalent, it becomes, to me, obviously something important. And I feel like if I learn it, I've gained power because I've gained knowledge, and something then can't control me or my fellow loved human beings. And there you go. So yeah, we'll definitely follow up on that for sure.
Yeah. Like you said, dude, I just like, that's the same thing. Like, simple question, like I keep myself in is like, is this thing I'm going into, is it causing some sort of like, am I feeling some sort of resistance or tension or anxiety or whatever and stuff going into it? Or just maybe do I feel like the more I'm going into it, I'm feeling more unclear? Or is it making me feel empty and stuff like that? That's how you know. If it's not, it's a good chance that, yeah, go ahead, keep going a little bit.
Right. Follow the old brick road. All right.
That's it.
On that note, we thank you for listening. Till next time.
Adios.